Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Enablement Brew. Unfortunately, Carly can't be with us today, but I am joined by an incredible guest, and we're so excited to dive into the topic. Richard, welcome to the Enablement Brew.
I'm excited, Malvina. It's felt like a long time coming.
I know.
It's good
I'm
that we're finally here. Unfortunately, one woman down, but all good.
one woman down, but we finally managed to secure you, and I love all the content that you post on LinkedIn, and there's always so much wisdom in there. I actually have a Richard folder on my
Oh
LinkedIn
wow!
where I take little snippets of your posts and I put them in a Google Doc. I can share it with you afterwards if you want to see some of
I'm
the
just
highlights.
I'm gonna call my mom and tell her the good news.
I love that. All right, so this is the Enablement Brew. We start off every episode by talking about what's in your mug. So, Richard, what's in your mug?
A very nice cup of Yorkshire tea. I'd say like a 7/8 on the color scale. Just how I like it. But yeah, it's has to
Dash
be
of
Yorkshire
milk.
tea. Semi skim milk. It's just classic, you know, classic
Sugar.
British cup of tea. No sugar. I'm sweet enough.
Well, I have a coffee that's gone terribly cold, but I'm still
Oh
sipping
well.
from the morning. So, shout out to my husband who made it for me in the morning, just as we were getting our kids ready for school. And this is the coffee that I'm enjoying now. So, yeah, it's
What a
cold, but it
hero.
still tastes good. Richard, for those who don't know you, for our listeners, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I am a mid-30s guy who's been in sales for 15, 16 years. I live in Yorkshire with my wife. Um, I never wanted to be in sales. Even when I was at university, I never even thought I would be in sales. I actually studied a computer science degree. Not sure why when I think back now. I realized I was not smart enough really to do that degree. um, and had the kind of the very underwhelming degree grade to show for it at the end of it. But yeah, kind of like many people, sort of found themselves in sales. Started life as what we call now as SDRs. They weren't called that back then. But it was essentially doing the role of an SDR.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's been a kind of a wild sort of 15, 16 years. I'm probably one of those people who are very kind of fortunate to have got to the position and role that I found myself in. I do definitely acknowledge that. Being very sort of blessed to have been a co-founder of a startup. That we had a fairly successful exit from it, and that's kind of landed me to where I am today, which is heading up the EMEA sales org for Allego, who are a sales enablement software company. Um, but yeah, apart from that, I'm a avid Newcastle United fan, season ticket holder. It's kind of like my big fix in life is Newcastle when they're playing well anyway. Um, but yeah, I think apart from that, I'm a fairly simple, straightforward guy.
Oh, well, look, I love your content on LinkedIn because I feel like a lot of people on LinkedIn, especially these days, they tend to really overcomplicate things. And
Mm,
what I appreciate about your posts and your content is you truly say it how it is, and it's actionable insights. It's something that you can take away and really put to practice right then and there, which is what I love and value. And I'm sure a lot of your followers and people who look at your content, they value and appreciate that. Um, for today, I was really hoping to explore, and we spoke right before we hit record about, let's be honest, Q4, it's a relatively short quarter. By the time we get to pretty much mid-December, it's finished.
yeah.
Everyone's in party mode, wearing Christmas jumpers, and life is great. But obviously, life is great when that quarter has also hopefully finished great. And we talked about the concept of backstage selling. Walk us through it.
Yeah, well, I can't take the credit for the term backstage selling. That was actually kind of a coined by the founders of my company. They wrote a book all about virtual selling, and but I kind of love this concept because I think the world of B2B sales, software sales, which I'm sure most people listening to this are probably in that world, um, has changed an awful lot even the last couple of years. Selling is getting more complex. Even if you sell deals on the smaller side, you probably realize and recognize that even those deals are getting more complex.
Mm.
And I say this as a co-founder of a conversation intelligence company where I was like, and I still am to an extent, like a big believer that sales happens when you're on a Zoom call with a prospect or with them face to face, and you're having that crucial conversation, right? And um, uh, that being said, whilst I do still really believe in that, I see that so much success in selling actually happens kind of behind the scenes, called backstage. If you think of an orchestra where as a salesperson you're the conductor, you have those kind of front stage interactions, which is kind of when you're live speaking with a prospect or prospects on a call. But actually, when that concert, you know, shuts down, finishes, um, it's all of the stuff kind of backstage that you should be doing and quite frankly orchestrating to help you differentiate yourself, to help you um, multi-thread, build really good relationships with your prospects, um, get insights into do they really care, what are they interested in, and that's essentially what backstage selling is all about. It's all the activities that you can be doing as a seller when you're not sat on a discovery call or a demo live on a call with a prospect.
Yeah. And I find a lot of sellers really struggle with that, right? I see a lot of emails going out, especially if
Mm,
the deal has maybe gone a little bit cold and they go a little bit like this. Hey, Rich, any updates? Hey, circling back. Hey, just checking in. And those, I'm always saying that those type of emails and messages, they don't add any value and they actually don't force your prospect to want to necessarily reply to you. I
right.
mean, you can in the goodness of their heart just to give you a little bit of an update. But then again, you're back in square one. They give you an update, and then what's next? So, if you had to break it down into really actionable tips of what you can do when you're not face to face with the prospect, but you want to keep the motion going, we all know that time kills all deals, and we see it happen all the time. What can the seller do that's actionable to actually maintain that momentum in the sales process?
Yeah, where I'll start with that, Malvina, is I used to get really frustrated when I used to kind of see people post on LinkedIn, make sure you bring value, add value. And I always kind of felt like I understand the premise of what you're saying there, but I always felt it kind of really lacked real examples of where
Yeah.
you can add value. And so I think a lot of salespeople would kind of scratch their heads saying, yeah, you can tell me to add more value, but I don't know what that means. And I think ultimately, value is in the eye of the beholder, and you have to at least have a good understanding of what you feel your prospect sees as valuable. Otherwise, you're just kind of potentially pushing stuff onto them that they don't care about. Um, but you're 100% right. Is that just simply checking in, following up? It's not really helping the prospect. Is not feel motivated to respond. And I actually think it starts at the point of the the end of the end of the last call you have with them is fixing a next step. And lots of people fix the next step. They say, hey, why don't we catch up in 2 weeks' time? That's the kind of the textbook line. And but they don't actually provide any sort of context as to
Why?
what is going to happen in 2 weeks' time. What's going to happen between now and then? What's the purpose? Why would the prospect even want to show up in 2 weeks' time to that next call? And that's where as a seller, again, when you think of a conductor in an orchestra, you have to be potentially recommending things. Between now and then, I'm going to set you some homework, or I'm going to share this with you, and I'm hoping you can share something back with me. And that next call, as I understand it, you're going to be having conversations with this person internally. And if they are excited about this as you are, then that next call typically will be bringing that person into the conversation. You have to kind of, you have to be prescribing that from the end of the call and making sure that the prospect, the buyer, actually agrees that it's a good idea is the other part of that. So I'll kind of start with that concept of backstage selling really starts at the end of the kind of the front stage conversation. But what can you be doing in between those conversations? Because I think that's where a lot of salespeople struggle. They have a calendar invite on their calendar for 2 weeks out, and they kind of sit there and they sometimes count down the days of like, oh, it's 3 days till I'm catching up with Malvina and I'm so excited about her update. And actually, well, how can you ensure that that prospect feels motivated to turn up? How can you be adding value in that period of time? One of the things I'm super excited by is this concept of digital sales rooms. And yes, I'm kind of blowing my company's own trumpet because, you know, we have a digital sales room product in our platform, but I've actually seen how the impact that these can have myself on my own team's deals, where, you know, you can create this highly personalized site for your buyer, and you can drop in relevant content or content that you believe they're going to find relevant and valuable into that room. You can drop in personalized videos summarizing the conversation that you've had with the prospect, the key things that they care about. And it just provides this really experiential buying environment for your buyers that's completely differentiated against any of your competition, to come in and to basically choose what content they want to consume. And hey, I want to learn more about that, or hey, that looks interesting, or hey, here's a video from Rich that's reinforcing some of the key problems that I'm facing, and it shows that he's listened. And it's just a wonderful buying experience. They can consume that on their own time. The beauty for the seller is that they actually get some nice signals saying, hey, Malvina's checking out this and this, and that's really good for them to continue personalizing the buying journey. So digital sales rooms is one example of that. Another example I've got of where you can be building value is multi-threading. And I think salespeople really struggle with this, right? They hear, I need to be multi-threading more. I need to be multi-threading more, but they don't really know how to do it.
Or what do I say?
What do I
I
say?
know that I should reach out to this person because they could be a potential stakeholder. I haven't yet been introduced to them. I know maybe they're going to play some sort of a role in the buying process. I know I should reach out, but what do I say? Hey,
Yeah.
speaking to Susan about X, Y, and Z. Hope you're well. You know, what should
Yeah.
that message look like?
And they also have the fear of, like, you know, going over the prospect's head. Like, you know, that a lot of salespeople have that concern. So again, part of this is like, first of all, understanding in the sales conversation, the front stage interaction, who else cares about these problems? Not who's the decision maker or who's got a big say here. Who else cares about the problems that we've discussed today? Because that might actually be people who are even at a lower level than the person that you're speaking with.
Yeah.
But they have influence in the buying decision. And when you understand who those people are, what problem that you're solving, what is that they care about, then it means that you can send them a video, but talk about the problem that they will care about. Don't try and persuade them to come on a call. If they want to come on a call, they will join a call. They will ask for a call. And that's a good way of feeling like you're not going over your prospect's head and just going to set up loads of demos with people that they don't want you to. And you can just send a video, maybe attached to a piece of content around a case study where you've solved a similar problem, or even like a mini like walkthrough video of your product around that shows how you solve a problem. And it could be a video that says, hey, Malvina, I was catching up with Carly just this Thursday and we were talking about this problem. And, she actually shared that this specific problem is one that you may have a vested interest in. Listen, I'm not here to ask for your time. I just wanted to share a case study or a walkthrough video of our product that just highlights how we help. If you feel like you want to learn more, then check in with Malvina and see if she's happy for you to join the next call.
Yeah.
And it's something as simple as that. And it's amazing when you do that, the kind of response that you get from people. Hey, didn't know this was going on. This looks really interesting. Or, hey, yeah, Malvina actually has shared that she's been looking into solutions for this.
Yeah.
And it just starts to differentiate. So there's a couple of things that you can do there to help you start to multi-thread.
Yeah. And I always say, sales is this give to get type relationship, but I almost feel like we've completely changed the shift from give to just get. And
Yeah.
what I love about your approach is there is no call to action, as in jump on a call with me, would love to show you the product, let's set aside 30 minutes. I'm just giving you something. And to your point, if the interest is truly there, it might not be today. It could happen. They could get involved later down the line, but you're giving something. You're not just, I feel like we as sellers today just want to get, like discovery,
Yeah.
get all the information that you possibly can. And we forget about this give, the element of reciprocity. And it could be something very small as, hey, here's a case study here. Here's how we've helped a customer who's maybe of a similar size in a similar industry.
Right.
Here's some feedback that we've been getting on G2. Hey, here are industry trends actually that are affecting everyone in this particular industry, right? All around insights. I'm curious about your thoughts, and I think this is a challenge that many sellers can relate to. You think your deal is going really well. You think you have a very strong champion, and you get to the date when you think the deal is going to close, and you realize, I've never met the economic buyer. I actually don't necessarily know who's signing off on the budget. The champion has told me that they're going to handle it, that they're going to have that internal conversation. When we asked to be introduced to the economic buyer, they said, no, leave with me. It's not necessary for this individual to get involved. And then the seller's thinking, okay, do I take that verbatim and actually sit back, or do I go above them and try to reach out to the EB? And I feel a lot of deals end up falling off the cliff when you haven't, I'm not saying even sat down with the economic buyer, but established some form of line of communication. What's your approach when a seller is in that situation?
Do you know it's really tough, and I'd love to hear, from yourself after I've shared my thoughts here as a buyer yourself, Malvina, like how you would feel about this if you were being sold to, and maybe if you weren't the economic buyer. But it's really tough, and I do feel for salespeople in this situation, and because I live and breathe these things myself with my own team and the deals that we work. I think, like, first of all, what I would start to look at is how are you defining your champion? And I think lots of salespeople think they have champions in deals. Like, I used to be one of these people that, hey, all of my prospects who seem to, like, I don't know, like my product, I was like, I've got a great champion. Like, it was like every deal I didn't have a champion in. And actually, in hindsight, when I look back now into how I define champions now, I'm like, wow, like 75% of the people I sold to weren't true champions. They were just, people evaluating my product. And the way that I evaluate champions, and we do this in my team when we kind of score our deals, is they have to tick a lot of these boxes. They have to have open dialogue with you and share information quite freely. They shouldn't feel like a closed book. They should disclose pain quite openly. It shouldn't feel like you're kind of digging for gold in your discovery calls. People with pain and genuine champions want to kind of share their problems quite openly. They open doors to other stakeholders for you. But also a key thing is they take you to power, right? And that is where a lot of champions, what we think are champions, kind of fall down. Why don't they take us to champions? So why don't they take us to power? They're protective. Why are they protective? Because they're nervous that hey, if I put you in front of power, it's kind of like the last step. And I want to be sure that the people I put in front of power is the people is the company that I'm truly believe in. So you have to ask yourself, if your champion is reluctant to do that, it probably tells you that they don't fully trust you yet. And that might be quite a bitter pill bitter pill to swallow for a lot of people. And it doesn't mean that you've done a bad job, right? It doesn't mean that you've done a terrible job as a seller. It just means that you haven't quite gained their trust enough, or they aren't fully on board with you as their vendor of choice to take you and put you in front of power. And that's not to say that every deal you have to sit on a call with the person who signs the contract. We've done loads of deals where that's not happened. But what we have had is, as you say, some kind of like dialogue, insight, line of communication, even if that is like being an exchange of emails from that person. But it's a tough one. But I think really people have to ask themselves, if they're not getting to that level, they may want to ask themselves, have I actually genuinely got a champion? Because when you say a champion suggests someone who will champion you, who believes in you, who will shout your name from the rooftops. And if they're not taking you to the people who can make the real decisions, it's probably because they're not a champion yet.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny because obviously being in enablement, I oftentimes find myself being a champion. If I'm truly excited about a particular product or service, like I know I'm a damn good champion because I have the AE on my WhatsApp sending me messages on a Friday night, asking me for the intel of what's happening. Hey, should I be worried about this? No, it's all good. Don't be worried. Everything's under control. Like to your point, we have that open line of communication. And if I'm a true champion, like I don't mind if I have you on WhatsApp. I don't mind if you add me as a contact. I don't mind if you ping me at 10 p.m. Like it's all good. Everything goes.
Yeah.
And it is that free flow of information. And I'm updating you on what's happening internally and sharing also my concerns. And I think this is what, to your point, we sometimes think we have a champion, but they're not necessarily telling us, hey, I'm worried this isn't going to go ahead because of X, Y, and Z. Or, hey, just so you're aware, we do have a little bit of friction because not everyone is necessarily on board. Or, hey, next meeting, watch out for this person. We really have to get them on board, right? Like, if you have a person who's doing all of that for you, then you're like, yeah, 100% they're my champion. But oftentimes sellers will think, they're my champion because I've had the first meeting with you and you seemed to like the product. So yes, I'm putting you down as my champion. And then when it gets to that conversation of, hey, can you introduce me to so-and-so? No, not yet. And you get a little bit frustrated. But I always say, like, if you're able to establish that line of communication in an informal way, i.e. get their phone number, and they're sharing information, you should absolutely do that. Otherwise, you're just dealing with a contact, and a contact is not a champion.
Yeah. And what I loved about what you said there is it's so funny when I think of the deals that like go well for us, or where we have a genuine champion. You do move to WhatsApp or text. Like not many prospects you get to that level, and it's just funny that you just have that different type of engagement with those types of with a real champion. And the other thing is key there is that a champion isn't always there to tell you good news. A champion can be there to tell you some things that are off, some things that, hey, this person, they've worked with your competitor in a prior life. I'm a little bit concerned about, it's what they are is a great source of information. You have a very truthful and open dialogue with them. And I think from a lot of salespeople listen to this, maybe for active deals you're working, maybe, and this might be hard to listen to because you might be thinking, oh man, maybe I don't have as many champions in my pipeline as I thought I did. But that's not a bad thing, because it allows you to figure out what are the deals that you should be spending time on. And maybe there's some things that you can do to get a champion in your deal that you haven't quite done yet. So don't be too despondent if you're like sat there thinking, oh man, my whole pipeline doesn't look as good anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious your thoughts. Obviously, when you're working on a big enterprise size deal, having that champion absolutely important. What about for those AEs that maybe aren't enterprise level and actually they're dealing with very small deals? Maybe the deals that they're working on are quite transactional, in the sense, a decision could be made within 5-6 days. Is it still important for me to have that champion if it's a smaller deal? And it's
Yes.
something that you know the organization needs, because without this particular thing, they actually can't move
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, I think it depends a bit, but I would still side with yes, because even I've done some kind of private work with some companies who would be classified, they do like small business deals, or they're smaller deals, they're far less people involved in the sales cycle, and the person they're speaking to is still not always the person who has the power to sign the contract. Um, and they still have to you still have to build a champion with that, because that person is still they're still speaking to two or three other companies to choose the one that they want to buy, and so you still have to earn the trust of that person who is prepared to either take you to the person who can sign the contract, or can advocate for you to that person. Um, and if you sell to the person, like maybe you sell to, like, you are selling directly to the person who signs the contract, then that person still has to be a champion, because they still have to champion you and feel like you're the right option. So I think it's relevant. I think it's relevant no matter what size deal you're running. And I've found that in more complex deals, or deals where you're not selling to the person who has the power to sign off on something, um, having a great champion is as important, or sometimes even more valuable, than having access to the actual person of power. It sounds quite strange to say that, but they just have this funny way of just driving the deal for you. You just know when you've got a good champion, because the sale feels easier. It feels less like a grind. And yeah, I think they can be as valuable as having access to power.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you're really big and you're really, really passionate on coaching. Now, usually I would ask you what's the best advice you've received, but what's the best advice that you've given your sellers that you feel has really made a difference in their careers?
Oh, wow. So it's funny because
We'll
every week,
validate with them afterwards.
yeah, every week we do these. We do, like, we've done this for as long as I can remember. These, team kind of call breakdown sessions. We always do them Friday morning first thing, and we did one. I was doing one this morning, and um, it's the same kind of like stuff that you feel like you're a broken record, but it's and they smile when they know I'm saying it, because they're like, oh, here's Rich again. Um, and it's so key, and it's like I always have figured it out after doing this job for quite a long time. And you come back to the start, you said, Malvina, about kind of like the fact that I don't overcomplicate things, and I figured out that when it comes down to selling, really you're having to answer four killer questions, and those questions are: does the prospect that I'm speaking with, do they have a problem that I solve? In other words, is what they're saying to me kind of stuff that I'm used to hearing from other people that went on to buy from us? It's not like, that kind of sounds like a problem we solve. Because if people don't buy with like, kind of, like, nobody buys square peg in a round hole. If they say stuff that you're like, I hear that from people who buy, that's the answer to the first question. Second question: is the problem that they're describing, is it big enough for them to care about? In other words, is it on like the top two or three on their priority list? Right, which doesn't sound like it sounds like you've got a small chance, but unfortunately, that's the way things work. If you're not on that top two or three of that person, that business's priority list, then it's probably not going to happen right now. Third killer question: are they motivated to solve that problem now, or at least in the short term? If they're saying, oh, we're thinking about solving this, but for 12 months, it's not a deal right now, right? It's just not, certainly not something that they're thinking about. They're not motivated. It's not a big enough issue for them to take action, at least in the short term. Ideally, they want to be saying, I want to solve this now, or I want to solve this yesterday. And the final question is, why would they choose you over the competition? Now, coming back to my coaching advice, is like, we listen to these calls and I ask these same questions again and again. Have we heard a problem that we solve? Yeah. Does the problem sound big enough? Don't think so. Okay. It's probably not a deal. And I go through these questions all the time. We score our deals on, and it's kind of, I think the feedback that I've got from the team is it's helped them really figure out what are the deals that I want to be investing lots of time and effort in, because time's very precious. You could spread yourself so thin across a ton of deals where most of them are never actually going to come to anything in the short term. And if you start to answer yes, or you have good answers to all of those questions, then okay, this is a deal that you should be investing time and effort and resources in. I think it's kind of helped them understand how they can be using their time better, how they can forecast better, how they can be calling in and pulling in the right resources to the right deals, because selling's a bit of a team game now. So that kind of stands out as just something that's quite top of mind, quite relevant, quite recent. So
I love that. I could talk for ages with you, and you know that, but I'm going to wrap it up on one final question. If the problem doesn't seem big enough and it doesn't seem like a priority today, can the seller turn that around and actually make it a problem that becomes a priority that they have to solve today?
ooh, that is a goodie, right? Because I used to think you could kind of like build pain, build urgency, and maybe this is kind of where my opinion is kind of changing as as sales changes, and you're allowed to change your opinion on sales. Um, um, to the point that I'm like, you can't necessarily create pain that doesn't exist or that the prospect sees as pain or a problem. You can't magically make them feel something. What you can do is you can do a good job of identifying that and trying to get them to see it where perhaps they didn't see it before, or maybe the problem that they're thinking they have is not the real problem. But what you can't do is create something that isn't there. So, and again, I used to think, like, when on discovery calls, I was like, keep digging and digging, and here, like, and I just learned that life's too short. Life's too short to have that approach in sales. Like, again, most prospects who want to buy from you should share the problems that they're facing and the problems that they care about, and they should be quite free with that information. I always remember one of the best pieces of advice I've ever learned in sales. I can't remember who I heard this off. It was years ago. Is spend your time selling to people who want to buy your stuff. It sounds so simple, but it kind of helped me kind of figure out, hey, I need to stop getting my shovel out on discovery calls and like asking 1,000 questions to find the pain. Life's too short to do that. Share insights, share how you helped other people, see if that resonates, see if it's stuff that people care about, and then see how big the problem is. But yeah, that's just my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours.
I'm smiling because I absolutely love what you just said. Even though I'm an enablement, and I think I said this on a few panels and conferences that I took part, but I said, I absolutely hate going through a discovery call because I hate going through the 20,000 different questions in hope that something is going to appear.
Yeah.
What I love is tell me what others are hearing and feeling in the market. What are other problems that enablement leaders are coming across? How you've helped them. Give me again, give to get, right? Give me something so that I want to open up to you. But I think again, today it's all about to your point, take the shovel and let's see if we can really dig something out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you said. I think you summarized it so well.
But what I hope people listen to this, the beauty of this podcast is that they get to hear from buyers, right? Because people never spend time listening to how do buyers want to be sold to, right? And they think, oh, it doesn't matter about that. I've got my sales methodology and my sales process, and it doesn't that counts for very little if your buyer doesn't enjoy that. You've got to sell to how buyers want to buy, and that's the big transformation that I think sales has been on. is on, and it's becoming a buyer's game, and you have to align with that. You have to adapt. You've got to be seen as a valuable, useful resource as a seller now, and it's good to hear that we're on the same page. So
I love that. I could talk to you for ages, but I think that's a nice way to wrap up this episode of the Enablement Brew. So thank you so much for coming on.
Loved it. Thanks, Malvina.